All right, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to do movement minute, and then we'll get started with tonight's webinar. So go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. What's new? Interest rates last week probably you've noticed were a little bit sporadic, and we're back hovering up into that 7% territory. Interest rates on jumbos still in that 6.5, FHA 6.75, conventional a little bit closer to that 7% benchmark. One thing that just be prepared for this spring is we're going to start to see FHA become even more prevalent in our markets. And one of the reasons why is that there's still quite a bit of flexibility with underwriting on FHA mortgages over conventional mortgages. So be prepared. Don't be afraid of FHA buyers, and because they're great buyers. They just sometimes need a little bit more flexibility with underwriting. So keep that in mind. And the good news is FHA just announced.
Sorry, we got to mute people too, Eric.
Okay. And quickly, FHA just announced that they've reduced the mortgage insurance, the monthly mortgage insurance from 0.85 to 0.55, 30 basis points. And that's like equivalent to a quarter of a point. So it's going to make a difference and be even more affordable for in this crazy interest rate environment. So thanks.
Awesome. You know what, Deanna, I think we could announce, right, that we were able to get that deal, that special incentive done. I know every dollar counts.
Right? Okay, thank you. I was trying to rush through so much, but you'll see on the Best Choice Connection site that I do have a coupon for $500 off. It's for any loans that closed with me through movement all the way into August. So I hope that you just clip that or give me a call and ask me to send you one. But I would love to have an opportunity to save $500 in real closing costs for your buyers. So
I mean, I think we did that when the market was kind of resetting. We had a preferred lender, Dan, that did that for us when we were going out of 08 and kind of into 2009 and 10. And I can tell you the consumers loved it. Just every little bit counts when you have a really good person. So
absolutely.
A long way. So reach out if you need to go ahead and use that. And I believe we can do that even in Spokane as well, because Deanne's branch manager is also the branch manager out here in Spokane as well. So those of you who are on the other side of the state, that's applicable to you as well. Super. Well, thanks, Deanne, for the update. We really appreciate your insight on the marketplace. Tonight, we're going to be talking about how to deal with difficult clients. Many of you have experienced it. Candace is here. Eric is here. I think combined, Eric and Candace and I have probably dealt with the most difficult clients and difficult agents in the last week. I think we're up to, I'm over 200 or 300 of difficult clients or agents that I talk to. And Eric is up there as well. And I know Candace is on, she talks with agents and talks with clients. So what better than to have these two people on the call to help me. So thank you for that. Eric and I are going to go through, Eric did the slides tonight. So we're going to have changed it up. Got some coffee. As you know, Eric is a coffee drinker. He drinks
just a little bit. If you guys don't like the slides, you can still blame Shannon. So just throwing that out there. So on to the first one.
Yeah, go ahead and go to the next slide. That'd be great.
Come on, you can do it. My mouse just freeze.
There we go. All right. If you guys want to get your chat ready, we will have a spot tonight's call where you can chat. So definitely be ready to chat or unmute your line if we get to that point. We're going to talk about the top 10 tips on how to deal with difficult people. So people in general. So do you want to start it off, Eric, or do you want me to jump?
Speaking of that opportunity to unmute and share, I'm sure we've all dealt with difficult clients or other agents before. I'm sure that's not mutually exclusive to just Candace, Rochelle, and myself. Who would care to share a tip or trick you've used in the past to deal with said clients or agent? And that you can include yourself in this category if you're shy of examples.
Yep. It could be very therapeutic. I know that it's helpful to sometimes just to get it out, but maybe you don't deal with that other agent in this way. But if it helps you be able to deal with it just by typing in the chat, be my guest. Get it out, and that way it can move on. Sometimes that's one of the top, tips is just sharing that with somebody else so it just diffuses and then you can actually tackle. It's kind of the way to go, kind of
I
ease
have the
your mind.
participant list, guys. I will call you out. I'm not afraid. So,
All right. Let's go over the first one. The first top 10
Uh-huh.
tip for difficult people
Mhm.
is to maintain self-control. Losing your cool or giving into emotion, which I did today. It was different type of emotion, but if you have emotion and you can't maintain self-control or you feel yourself losing control, you want to breathe and you want to really think and lower your voice and talk a lot slower. When I'm handling situations, it's not like I'm in training mode where I'm training. I slow my pace way down and I become much more of a listener. So that's a number 3. But self-control is all about de-escalation and lowering your voice and making sure that you are speaking at a slow pace so that you can be heard. So that's maintain self-control is number 1. Number 2, Eric, you had a good example in number 2.
So asking non-threatening questions. This is a fantastic one because oftentimes we're going to start getting upset dealing with that clients and or agents. And we can't be overtly aggressive because then they'll fire us, but we can be passive aggressive. And sometimes that comes out through the questions we ask. And so we ask, for example, when I'm recruiting, I can easily say, well, I prefer John Scott. They're better. I'm like, oh yeah, how is John Scott actually better? You're not winning hearts and minds with that one. So sometimes you have to take a step back and ask the same question, but in a way that empowers them to give an answer that they want to give you. So asking a question is a lot like gift giving. We all have that one family member, aunt or uncle that gives us that book that we will never, ever read, but God bless their soul, they love giving it to us and it just adds to the pile on our shelves. Yeah, I see Candace going, yeah. So oftentimes the best way to get around this is to ask a question they want to answer, even if they're being hostile. And this is asking a question into their interests or into something they like, or even into a topic that you're just talking about. So for example, if I'm talking to another client or an agent, specifically an agent, and they're like, my brokerage is the best way to go about it is like, oh, what are they doing so well that's keeping you there? And that's usually a great topic to go. And rather than being hostile about it, to go, oh, most agents love, like as we do, to talk about our own performance and how well we're doing. We all have war stories. So just tapping into that rather than switching into that really easy passive aggressive gear with our questions, I think is incredibly, incredibly important. Anybody have any examples? Cheryl McLaren?
No, she's not going to talk. She's
No. I thought we were friends, Cheryl.
Well, I
thought
go
we were
back to
friends.
Denise a lot,
Yeah.
Michelle. I go back to Denise a lot, and she's wanting to sell her condo now.
Oh, seriously? Oh,
I'm not doing it. But you do have to redirect people a bit, and I think asking them the questions is really good, Eric. I think you guys have a great list here of things to decompress people, and that's where the professionals really come out. Is when knowing how to do that. And keeping it peaceful and getting it closed, that's the big deal.
And it's funny when you find common ground, it's not related to the issue. Maybe you start your conversation. If you have something that's really, you're passionate about, or an issue, or, you're dealing with something that's very difficult. Sometimes you start the conversation by asking their non-threatening questions. I mean, I'm dealing with a situation down at the border, and I'm talking with the Northwest MLS CEO, and it's a very challenging, a very passionate thing that I'm trying to deal with. And I just kind of joked with them and said, hey, we've got a conflict at the border, and just kind of making light of that. And that kind of de-escalates a lot of the tension that is between handling something or a difficult situation. So it could be a person, but it also could be a difficult situation. And those questions are key. If you don't have good non-threatening questions, you probably want to spend some time with somebody that has de-escalated some things, so you know what questions to ask.
And I never thought about them being non-threatening questions. It's just, I think it's a natural not team building, but relationship building to ask the questions. But I like the non-threatening questions, something just really, I never put it that way before. I like that. I'll remember that. Candace, what do you do?
It's not necessarily on the list. I've tried approaches of just like a restart. Especially when you have, and pulling back my emotion, making sure that I'm not too caught up in this. Like, in most cases, it's the customers, right? And then we as agents, maybe on the listing and selling side as agents, are putting our emotion into it. So I try to like reflect, okay, wait a minute, am I getting too caught up in my emotion on how I'm being treated? They're doing the same thing. They're trying to, work for their client, as I am too. So can we restart? We kind of got off on the wrong foot, and I just want to make sure that I am voicing how my client is responding properly. And this is not specifically me, this is what my client wants. And so kind of just a basic restart.
Yeah, I like that.
Finding that common ground.
Yeah.
I think once you find that common ground, that helps make a little peace there in the family.
Yeah,
That's
Dan
awesome.
said acknowledging how they're feeling. Like I get, we're both right now at a place where we're kind of getting pretty upset, and I don't want to be in that space. We work together to make this close and just a restart. That's worked quite a few times,
Like that.
but not every time.
I know we all deal with difficult clients in different ways, but you do want to, number 4, acknowledge the problem. So you want to state that very clearly. I think we see a lot of people, and some of us on the call, we know who we are. We maybe put it too much in text, and then it gets, the problem is so embedded that it's harder for me to get involved because there's so much other distracting things that get in the way of really what the problem is. So for example, and there's at least 5 or 6 sewer scope issues I'm dealing with right now. So if you have a sewer line that's old, beware. I don't know what's in the water. Candace had one last week, and there's 4 others that I'm dealing with. But you want to acknowledge the problem. Sometimes it's not just the sewer line. There's another problem that has to be, but it's all jumbled up because you guys put it so much in a text, you're just getting it all out. And you probably want to really isolate what is the problem. What are we trying to solve? And when I'm dealing with, agents calling me saying, hey, Rochelle, can you help me get involved? One of the things I need to understand first is like, do we represent the buyer? Or do we represent the seller? Or do we represent both people? So if you can help me in isolating, just like, who do you represent before you go in and tell me the whole story of the issue?
Right.
Acknowledge like, what is our position? And then also, what is the problem? What are we trying to solve for? And if we can get better at being a bit more concise and acknowledging that, even when we're trying to handle or solve for the problem, it becomes easier to tackle. Then we have all these other emotions that get involved. Eric, you had number 5. Why don't you go ahead with number 5?
So do not argue with them. The worst thing you can do when you get into an argument with a client is win. And then that's it. You've lost a client probably forever. A great example of this is when I was working with a client and I was trying to open the key box, the super key box. There's more of a story to this, but we're going to skip that part so I don't publicly humiliate myself.
Really a good, thoroughly well done class.
Sorry, we gotta.
If you want, I can send you the
We need our
default
Shannon,
slides
huh?
for that
Here we go.
class.
Amy, I love you, but I'm muting you right now, brother. So, yeah, so I may or may not have showed up late. I'm struggling with the super box to open it up. And finally, the client just turns around, looks at me, and goes, I want to go into the house. And there's a number of different reactions you can have when the client looks you in the eyes. You've taken the time out of your day, and they've driven from South Seattle to be in basically northern Linwood, Everett area. And then they don't even want to walk into the house. Well, one thing you do is get defensive and you start defending the position, start defending the home. And the problem with that is you're defensively arguing with them. The best thing to do is, rather than argue with them, is again, go back to just asking non-threatening questions and try and get on their side. And so rather than going, oh, well, maybe there's another home you want to see, or maybe how can we redeem this, or start apologizing for stuff that doesn't matter. Instead, I just started qualifying the client. Well, we saw this online. What brought you here to begin with? And that immediately opened her up. She started talking about how she liked the view and this and that. But after about 5-10 minutes of talking with her, she finally unveiled that she didn't see it from the pictures, but it looks like the house was dropped in the middle of someone else's backyard, and she wasn't willing to pay for that. And so that immediately opened her up. And for the first time in like 6 or 7 showings I've had with this lady, she's finally talking to me about what she actually wants. And we're able to set up another showing, and from there. So do not argue. Don't get defensive.
You could be argumentative and just say, gosh, and you could, blame the super key box, or you could have blamed the situation, or
a lot of things I could have blamed.
Yeah, but that argument, don't argue. Definitely don't want to argue. there was one situation, it kind of goes into number 6, Eric, where we're talking about
Mhm.
apologizing. We could have talked about that
Yeah.
earlier, where you said you've heard me not apologize, but apologize. There are certain times when you do want to apologize, and certain types of clients or agents that you don't want to apologize to. You have to be able to
Mhm.
know when to apologize and not to apologize. So
Yeah.
I had an instance where I was dealing with one of our listing agents, had a listing and dealing with a
Too
very
loud.
difficult client. And our difficult client, seller, she was adamant that her house was worth a lot more than it was. And she was similar to Cheryl McLaren's client. We had some issues there where she was, one day was a good day, another day was not a good day. And we had an investor that wanted to buy the property and went ahead and wrote a purchase and sale agreement and attempted to try to cut our listing agent out of the deal. So this investor contacted me. Not only are we dealing with a difficult seller, but we're dealing with a difficult buyer and a difficult situation as well. So one of the things that I was held my ground. I knew our problem, acknowledged the problem. I didn't argue on number 5, but the apology did not come from me. The apology actually came from the other person. So I held my ground because our ground was one to be held. I didn't apologize saying, we gave her bad advice, or we didn't, put the home on the market a certain time, or whatever that she was claiming. We had definitely factual data and a very clean set of a listing agreement. Thank goodness for a transaction coordinator who filled the paperwork in completely top to bottom. There's a reason why we use a TC. You know what I'm saying, Candace? You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And this TC had done such a good job that I was able to give that to not only the buyer, the investor that was very condescending, extremely rude. I'll show you an example of one of those people. And we did not argue. He was being very argumentative with me. I kept my ground, kept my self-control, did not apologize. But he told me literally this word for word. He said, you're just a little lady who does not know anything. And I could have gone really crazy on that, right? And I said, that's insane that you would say that, but I don't agree. And I think that is, and I acknowledge the problem. I don't think that's the problem we're really trying to solve today, was who I am and how long I've been in the business. He was doing all kinds of things to make it appear that he had the upper ground. At the end of the day, I called his attorney, had a very civil conversation. And he did call the next day to apologize, and as he should, because he was very, very argumentative and he did not have a case. So we resolved all of that, but that's dealing with difficult people. I had to use probably 4 or 5 of these different top 10 things to handle that situation. And luckily our listing agent is getting paid, and the buyer is actually going to buy, but what a difficult situation that could have become if we had not maintained self-control, or if the listing agent had not acknowledged the problem to me so I could really understand and get involved. So number 6, you got to know when to apologize and when not to apologize. And sometimes it does help. If there's something that will build common ground, you might want to apologize for something, but maybe don't apologize for the real problem. You apologize maybe because my email was way too long, or you're apologizing for something that's simple that you guys can agree on. That might be where the apology comes from. So I just did one today. It was interesting. It was a text message that was super, super long that came in and all upset about our agent at Best Choice. And so I just simply I apologize that my agent, sent you such a long email. Give me a call when we can talk about the issue. She called me and she's like, that's amazing that you work like that for your brokers. So again, sometimes apology works and it's warranted. Other times you want to hold your ground. You just have to know with what type of person you're dealing with on the other side. Number 7, Eric, I think, is offer to rectify the situation. Sometimes I heard Candace do this very well last week, coming up creative thinking, how to remedy the situation. And actually her remedy was what we ended up going with, right, Candace? I mean, we had talked about the certain situations, and it happened to be the one that we ended up with, and both parties were very happy with the outcome. It did take her giving away some of her commission, and it did take the seller conceding on something and the buyers conceding on something, but it rectified the situation. So number 7, if it's warranted, you may want to do an offering of that, of goodwill. Number 8, always continue to act professionally. I know things can get very heated. even if you have to take yourself out of the equation, maybe, and say, you know what, let's talk about this tomorrow. Let's sleep on this tonight. That is how sometimes where number 7 and number 8 can work really well, because you get so passionate, or maybe the conversation is so heated. Let's sleep on this and let's revisit. There's a lot that can happen overnight. I've had an agent that works for Best Choice, even overnight, said, you know what, I thought about it overnight, and I want to go ahead and do right. There's a lot of people that come to that resolution by just sleeping on things. So continue to act professionally, even though it might have been a hostile situation. You want to keep your ground and keep your professional image. Making sure that professionalism comes from how you write something too. So if you blast the other person, oh my gosh, you're such an idiot, or you're such a jerk, or there's all kinds of other names. Don't get me into a situation like that where I have to try to defend that type of behavior, because that's not really what we are all about at Best Choice. So please keep it professional. Make double sure that your paperwork is ironed out, that you are stating the facts, so that I go into battle with my full armor on and continue to act professionally. Number 9, analyze what caused the behavior. Eric, do you want something? I think you had it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Number 9 and 10.
9 really fits in well again to not being argumentative, but if you have a client that is being standoffish or just being extremely difficult, they might actually have a really good reason, or even a reason that gives you a window into building a stronger bridge with that agent or client. And so, for example, I was showing a home to a client 2 weeks ago, and this home was completely redone by a famous Dutch designer that I have never heard of, but the 2 homeowners loved it. And they literally had the Dutch designer's name strapped in the listing, then all the paperwork, and they had like the Dutch designer's face on like the mantle place, and they were really big on that. And I can tell you right now that she hated this Dutch designer and would start nitpicking all the details of the house, like, oh, is this actually Dutch and this and that. And one of the things I was really tempted to do was actually to defend the design. And I stepped on that landmine once on accident, because they had, if you guys watch the Homeowners Making Show or something like that, they have like this married couple, Chip and Jeanine or something like that. They go out, they tear down homes and rebuild it and sell it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Janet, you know what I'm talking about?
Of course.
Yeah. So they had like their book sitting on the table. So I'm like, well, they're probably just trying to do these styles because this and there is like, well, who cares about that? And I'm like, oh man. So it was like getting worse and worse. And so finally we got into one of the rooms of the study, and she started taking a lot of time looking at the study and asking, well, why do you like the study so much? And she finally uncovered that she's been an art history professor in England for 17 years. And suddenly it all started to come together why this new hip designer didn't really hit her when she was actually studying medieval literature and medieval art for 17 years in England. And so being able to take that slant and then diverting her back to like putting her art on the walls and her books on the bookshelves, and then really making them place her own, really switched the conversation around.
Yeah, I mean, I think before you told me she was like, this and closed and just totally not open to the property. And then by the end, when you're talking her through what caused her to behave in that way, oh, she's really into it. She actually was way into the property. She just didn't want to be sold by some, designer or the sellers touting their property because the sellers think their house is beautiful, right? And all of the defects. So that's great. And then number 10, you definitely want to set your limits on what you will tolerate. So we're going to go in at the very end of this. We got 5 minutes, Eric. That's how fast these things go. Number 10 is set limits on what you will tolerate. So we're going to give you like some of my best of how to fire a client. I don't think we've ever done that before. Cheryl Mape taught me a few things back in the day, how to fire.
Go right to the last slide.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, we can go through. Yeah, let's go back 1/2 step so I can at least make sure we cover this. There are 5 common jerks. These are 2 of the examples that we have here. If you want the other 3, send me an email because I have the 3 others, but you've got the complainers, which we kind of talk about complainers a lot. I don't want to just focus on the complainers, but the ones that I've dealt with a lot in the last couple of weeks is the intimidators. Candace will read the intimidators like, oh yeah, yep. That says that agent to a T. And then we have the clams. These are the client ones, the ones that confront a situation by shutting down. Those 2 are the ones So I want you guys to, I'm gonna have Eric flip it back. So you got the intimidators, read the intimidator and the clam. The other one is indecisive people and the know-it-alls. And those are agents and they can also be clients. Those are very difficult people to deal with. So with the intimidator and the clam, I want you to go back just to the top 10 things. I want you guys to, if you want to unmute your line, what would you do with the clam and what tip would you use for the intimidator?
For the
As you-
clam, I would ask them non-threatening questions
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Non-threatening questions, definitely.
and then listen to them and really just try to get some common ground. To the intimidator, I just kick him in the, you know what.
Yep. Candace does this beautifully. I've heard her. She
Keep them in the you know what. Candace does that beautifully.
oh yeah. She could do that too. But I would say that she does a good job of pausing. She's very, very good. It's like almost where an intimidator would be like, are you still there? Are you still talking to me? Are you still in the room? No,
Yeah,
I'm just listening.
I'm just listening.
Yep. And that was definitely
I
how you,
like that technique. I'm going to use that. I like that.
great one, Cheryl. Definitely with that one, that would be how to deal with the clam. As using non-threatening questions to pull it out of them. Great. What else would you guys do with the intimidator?
Yeah, who'd handle intimidator?
Well, you know, Rochelle, you put them on restriction.
I know you taught me
Oh,
that
we
a
can
long time
unmute.
ago.
Oh, sorry.
I think I wouldn't argue with an intimidator. It's
Nope.
just kind of pointless. It's kind of like, you fall right into their aggression and I wouldn't argue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want to argue.
Yeah, I've had a number of intimidators that I've dealt with on the mortgage side before I came over to Best Choice, and on the real estate side. And the very fact that the title is intimidator is what their strength is. They want to intimidate you. They want to cower over you. And so like Candace was saying, when you have a calm demeanor and you remain professional, it kind of takes the power away from intimidation when they realize that it's not working. And that's all they have is to try to be aggressive and intimidate you. And when their intimidation doesn't work against you, they try to find something else and they don't have anything else.
Yeah.
That's great. So you know,
Good.
definitely want to
Mhm.
continue to act
Really good.
professionally. Number 8, definitely of what you're saying there, Bernard. It's totally number 8 as well. Act professionally, number 8 for sure. With intimidators, you always want to compose yourself in that way. I think. Anybody else have anything to say? That was great input. Anything else will you do with an intimidator?
I think also just the setting the limits on what you will tolerate. And I think you mentioned one thing is like, maybe today we just say, you know what, let's try to talk tomorrow, or let's start over tomorrow, something to
Number
that.
No, I've had a couple of brokers that have been intimidators, and believe it or not, you know, when you stand up to them, not argue with them or anything else, but stand up to them,
Mhm.
they have more respect for you, and they both of them backed off.
That's awesome. Yeah, and they have a respect. That's the thing. Where even the guy that I dealt with was, you know, I state my position. He's like, "You're a tough negotiator." I said, "Well, when you have a position that you believe in," he's like, "You were really passionate. I had to talk to my attorney, and I owe you an apology." Yes, he did, because I set my limits of what I would tolerate, and just like you said, Cheryl, yeah, it worked like a charm. Awesome. Well, let's go in and give them how to fire a client then, Eric. They might be ready for that.
Everyone's favorite topic. We ready, y'all?
Okay.
Uh-huh.
You do want the full workup or the worksheet on this, I'm happy to send it to you guys, but when you are fired a client or you move past working with another agent, how did you go about doing it? So you've got some ones that we can roll through, right? You're fired. You want
Oh,
to say
yeah.
fired, don't you?
You really want to, but you can't ever do that.
Okay, so here's one, Eric. Let's see if you can soften it up. Your indecision is a real problem. I can see you're not committed to buying. That's what I want to say to my client, but how could you make that softer?
Say that one more time.
You're not making a decision on what house to buy. I see you're really not committed to buying. You're not really committed to this process. I showed you like house after house, 3 weekends in a row. How could you basically say you're fired or you're putting on restriction? What is a softer way of doing that?
That's a really good question. I don't know. Tracy, Gia, would you have maybe a good way to answer this?
See, I'm telling you, they don't like to
Tracy?
Well,
talk.
you know, what I've done with clients like that, because you get them all the time. You know, I actually got a guy on the phone. I've been sending him listings, and he passed and passed and passed. And I said, okay, do you have 10 minutes? Let's go through these listings that I've sent you. I want you to tell me what you like and don't like about these, so that I can zero in better. And we actually went to go look at another house, and I think he just felt heard. And because sometimes things get automatic, you know, but he's very busy, and I think you have to, well, like you said, Candace, you have to start at ground zero again, you know, and let them know you're committed to them. And sometimes you do have to fire them, though, if they're just really not serious, or
Yeah. It's the
if
other way to softly do it. I wrote my notes down. It says, it looks like you need a little more time to think about decision.
Yeah.
And so let's put things on hold for just a bit. Let's pause for a couple weeks. Let's take a break for the weekend.
Yeah.
So that also is kind of a way to diffuse the situation. Instead of saying, gosh, I'm taking you out every single weekend. You're not making it, you know, you're not committed, or you're not going to buy ever. I mean, you get so passionate because you've spent so much time with this person, but sometimes you just need a little break. So you taught me that, Cheryl, way back when. You put them on restriction, then you come back and they're ready to go.
Yeah.
Or what we talk about, putting somebody on the back burner, like they're on the front burner, just put them on the back burner, let them simmer for a little bit. Well, you cook up the first one, right? And you kind of work that way. So it's that concept of the stove top, right? You got to put somebody on simmer for a little bit, let them have some space. They need a little more time to like think about their decision-making process. And then when they're ready, they'll start to boil up again, and we'll go ahead and meet them. But if you get too emotional about it, then you're gonna lose the client. And
Well, I think it's important, though, to also stay in touch with them during that break.
sure, you're simmering. It's less touch, right?
Right. Just passively send them houses, and just say, I'm going to keep sending you houses while you're on your break, just so you can continue to watch the market. And if you have any questions, I'm here. But that way, then you're still poking the bear.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Another harsh one. I'll give you two, and then we'll wrap. So two more. Your expectations, Eric, are unreasonable. I can't afford to spend any more time with you. It's taking forever. You're expecting me to come out and stage your home and do all of these things. I can't afford to spend any more time working with you. It's pretty harsh. So
that's way too harsh.
Yeah. How do we soften that up so that we don't?
I would soften up by not saying a single word of that to the clients.
Well, you don't want to come across harsh at all.
Yeah.
How do you soften that? And I mean, hopefully it doesn't get to that point, but there are clients that are like that, where their expectations are very unreasonable. Candace, what do you think? How would you soften that up?
I mean, I think I had a situation, they wouldn't listen to me on price point, and it was kind of like, you know what, we've got no movement right now. Maybe we should just go ahead and take the house off the market for a little bit. Since at this point, we haven't had much activity. We're not getting enough showings on the property. We've got, and at this point, we can keep the place staged, but it's going to cost you now an extra $700 a month. So how would you like to pay that?
There you go.
It's kind of like, yeah. And it's giving a couple of other options. Like, we can do this or this.
Okay.
Right. So maybe like that little bit
Give
of
them choice. Yeah.
Here's some recommendations. My suggestion is that we, lower the price point, but if that doesn't work, we can take it off the market for a little while and, kind of let it get a reset.
And if you haven't done a seller or worked with a seller and they're frustrated about the marketplace, you need to reach out to Candace, to Shannon, to me, to another Best Choice Realty agent. We are here for you in that manner. So, I mean, I just got done meeting with the Idaho group, and they're all about helping. I mean, this is what we're all here for. We're all in this together as a firm. So that's great. Candace is really a softer approach. Here's another one.
I had a good one too.
I'm offended. You constantly complain and yell at me. That's like, somebody said that.
Hmm.
How can you say that a lot softer? I'm offended. You constantly complain and yell at me. Literally, that was said by text and on the phone. How can we deal with that? And that was from a client.
Oh, I apologize that I would actually, that's where I would apologize, because I mean, that's not.
Yeah, that's it. That's definitely one where you apologize. So the
Yeah.
softer would be, I'm sorry, I'm not meeting your needs.
Right.
It's probably best for you to work with someone else. That is one where you get to that level where you're offended and you're complaining and yelling at each other, literally on the phone. That's one where you definitely probably want to say, I'm so sorry, I'm not meeting your needs. And it's probably best that I get my manager or my managing broker or my designated broker to find somebody to work with you. Or maybe it's not at that level, but if somebody's offended and there's a lot of complaining and yelling, that's definitely, we want to soften that and just pivot and have somebody else. Maybe it's just a personality thing with that other person. Yeah, and then something, I'm tired of trying to tell you how to do my job. Don't tell me how to do my job. I've heard that before. So a softer way of saying that was, I don't currently have time to give you the proper amount of time that you deserve, or the type of time that this property is going to deserve. Let me refer you to somebody else who does have that time.
Mhm.
And that would be a way where if you are definitely not on the same page with a seller or a buyer, we have how many other brokers that we could refer to here at Best Choice that would be gladly pay you a referral fee. I've even had times, Cheryl McLaren knows this, or I've given my brother who's gone out on a wild goose chase, and who knows, and we were having a point in our relationship where it wasn't good. So Cheryl took that and she paid me a referral fee, and on they went. So I maintained my relationship with my own brother at that period of time in his life. So those types of arrangements can happen. And that's what we're here for, is to support you when you do get in difficult situations with your clients.
Mm.
Any questions or anything else we didn't cover? Candace, do we have anything else to cover? I think that was what Shannon said. We really need to cover how to manage our clients and manage through some of these things. There's a lot. This is like a 4-part series that I could do, that I've got content on. So I could do a little bit more in depth on some of the type of clients.
This is really helpful, Rochelle. We run into this stuff all the time, and it's frustrating, and it's what we lose sleep over, I think.
Well, and I think we're going to hear more of this, Cheryl, as the market changes, right? I mean, we're getting more people complaining, more people that I saw a news article saying more attorneys have been, I know, because I've called 5 or 6 attorneys, they're all booked. Because people are really sue happy right now, and they're not happy with some of their purchases they bought a year ago. They feel like the market's changed, where they lost money. And when that happens, we've got to be able to deal with things professionally. So hopefully this was helpful, at least give you a few tips and tricks. If you want the full presentation tonight, just send Brianna an email and she'd be happy to forward this. She's going to clip it, edit it, and then go ahead and post this on our YouTube. So if you need the handout that goes along with this, we'd be happy to supply it. Hope you guys have a great week, you guys. Thanks again for those of you that participated. Thanks, Cheryl, and thanks, Bernard and Candace and Eric for helping out tonight. And Deanne, always a pleasure. See you guys soon.